I'm Frankie Clutie, 11 years old.
And I'm Teresa Earl. I'm Frankie's mother, and I am now 54 years old. I knew Frankie was special in some way before she was born. She always had an innate ability to be sort of hyper-present in her surroundings, but also have this otherworldliness about her, right down to even when she was very little, I mean infant. I had heard about Indigo children or the phenomena of Indigo manifestation before, but I hadn't really thought too highly about it, if that makes sense. But I knew she was special very, very early on, through how she was conceived, through how much she had to fight to be here, and through an event that happened when she was born to me.
I think they're sensitive they're more sensitive than people around them, I guess, and they feel things that other people don't. Or I think they're a little bit more like psychic, I guess, kind of. They can connect with other people, maybe. It's a mixture of all different things.
So I knew that Frankie was unusual pre-birth, but it became very apparent after birth too. She, even as an infant, had the capacity at times to sense other beings in her presence, to teleport, if that's an understood term, I think so, things that she wanted. So she'd be seated in a car seat, there'd be an animal tied up around the corner, and in the next second I'd see it in her lap and she was playing with it, but it was firmly hooked on up around the edge of the car. You could tell when she was little that she was having conversations with something, some entity in the room, but there was nothing else visually in this realm in the room with her.
I had fake friends.
She had unique friends, it's true. And that was more, I would say, unconscious or not consciously activated when she was little, because it just happened. As she got older, of course, and she understood some things or not, it didn't happen quite as much, because she would, as she had power of what was rational in this realm, she would stop talking about it and things of that nature.
I don't think I did, but I don't remember any of that.
And the other elements are animals from very, very little. Animals that would seemingly be either powerful or stronger would come to her sort of meekly, and she could talk to almost any animal, and still can, that she wants to. So horses will come across fields to talk and let her pet. Dogs the same way, and cats, and it's a very interesting phenomenon to watch happen.
I just kind of look at them, and then they kind of like give me this stare that they know who I am, you know? They've seen me before, kind of. I think that I know when someone's gonna like say something. I know when someone's gonna say something, but I can't hear their thoughts exactly. I feel like it's kind of like deja vu, I guess, because I feel like I've heard it before and I know what they're gonna say. It's weird. It's hard to explain, but I think it's like deja vu.
There aren't exactly words in the English language to explain how I know what I know as well. It's called clairvoyance in the way we try to understand in a very linear way things in this realm. But it is a combination of seeing and hearing and knowing things. So I don't hear voices per se, but I hear and understand things that I'm supposed to. So how she'll react to something, or how someone else will, or what someone's issue is. I can't explain. It's very difficult to find the word to explain, but it's like a knowingness. Well, first I think it's important that you're using the word indigo, because I've read a lot about the distinction through authors like Doreen Virtue, people like that, about this distinction that's been made generationally from indigo to crystal to rainbow. And the problem for me with that is that it imposes this worldliness, linearness to a way of being, when in actual fact the spiritual world is not linear as we see it here, as we need time explained here. And because there's been division in the past of that, it separates characteristics that I think, unfortunately, come in mixed different generations. So I wouldn't be able to classify Frankie as just indigo or crystal or rainbow. I would say she's a combination of all of those, because she displays characteristics that are interesting and common to all of them. Frankie was born at 32 weeks, and she was held in the last week because I had some significant complications from being an older mother, but I didn't understand how significant they were until the very last minute, and neither did the doctor. When she was actually born, I passed in her birth. And during the time, and doctors were of course freaked out, during that time I remember very greatly seeing the other side, what I call the other side, and being called back because I understood I had a very great mission to carry out, which was to be her guide early on in her life. And I remember clawing my way back, roaring back, so that I could be here to help her, because it was made so clear to me by entities that I saw, absolutely saw, that I had to be here. And every single piece of her babyhood, I knew that laying next to her when she was little, where I could almost be in her psyche. We became one, and I felt like I was looking out through the world through my child's eyes, which is one of the greatest gifts in this lifetime I've ever had. I think having that little vision when she was born through her eyes, and being a child, almost an infant again myself, really helps guide me to provide that balance for her. Because I do feel that she has something amazing to do someday, and it's going to come with great effort. When Frankie was very young, and she first went to preschool, there was a teacher who I have great respect for, who noticed some of what I just accepted as Frankie, and noticed it as being out of the spectrum of how we teach and educate children. So I began to go and look into it and get some help, like I assume many parents do, and found out that there wasn't a lot of help in guidance out there for kids. And we eventually learned that she was, under clinical terms, diagnosed as having visual motor skills issues. That's how they could define it. For my experience, or our experience as a family, it was issues with seeing things on paper in a spatial way that was understandable, to be able to count, to read, things like that. The further I went with trying to learn about how can I best guide her to fill in that side, for example, because I didn't see it as a deficit initially at all. She saw things differently, and you could feel her interacting in her universe slightly differently. So her balance was a little different, but it wasn't that she was unbalanced. I don't know how else to explain that. But she would reach for a ball differently than another child might. Now, in our world, because we like to classify things, it's on the, I guess, not so far out of the norm functioning skills. So I went through testing. I went through what they told me would be helpful, that maybe she could have, I think it's an IEP, where they test to see where she is on the spectrum. I went and had that done. And I sat in a room with 12 teachers who told me basically that she wasn't far enough out of the spectrum to get help, but she would definitely have issues someday with math. And I said, but I'm starting now. I want to get, help for whatever it is that might help her work through herself as a person and learn better. but there wasn't. So I went through again the cycle of looking for people that could help me, and we found a group that works in Santa Monica on helping children who have visual motor skills issues. In those classes, there were enormous amounts of children, and most of them much farther off what we call the spectrum, either with ADHD or autism or all kinds of other diagnosed ailments that we've chosen. But one thing that they all had in common, and Frankie did, was an ability to communicate in their own way. And I found that really interesting. So we did a few sessions, we listened to the doctors, and ever since we've sort of reached out when she needs help, but taken it upon ourselves to fill in these little pieces. So motor skills, math is a challenge at times, but it depends on how she's taught. And in school they're taught a certain way about math, whereas it seems to attain the knowledge in a different way. It's a method of trying to help her, almost tutor, which is more visual. And her dad does the same, where he's able to take and pull apart say challenges and problems that they give them in school in words and teach her how to diagram it so that she understands. Instead of just hearing the words, she's seeing it visually.